James Polk, the 11th President of the United States. Say Polk. P-O-L-K. Polk. P-O-L-K. Polk. P-O-L-K. What do you call the white of an egg? A couple quick thoughts on Freud's ideas regarding personality theory. We had talked about these in class before, but a quick reminder that your conscious mind is something that you're aware of. It's what you are thinking about perhaps when you're sitting in class or having conversations with your friends, whereas your preconscious mind are those thoughts and feelings that are easily brought to your everyday awareness. Perhaps in class we asked each other to recall our earliest school memory, and if you thought about it for a couple seconds, you could probably recall one with ease. Your unconscious mind is beyond your awareness. Sometimes these are revealed perhaps in dreams, but overall Freud believed that these thoughts are buried for a reason, probably because we had a bad experience with something, or perhaps even just an overall bad memory. A Freudian slip is an error in reading, speaking, or writing. I think we mostly look at the speaking component of a Freudian slip. Perhaps we say something that we didn't mean, and Freud believed that this was perhaps something that we were really thinking, yet were maybe afraid to say. The example I used in class was a couple years ago. I was in the office, and Mr. Hart called me into his office, and I walked by really quickly and answered him and said, "Okay, honey, I'll be right there." Well, obviously, that is not the appropriate name to call the principal, Mr. Hart. So probably what happened was, the only male that I'm really used to talking to on a regular basis is my husband. So without thinking, I probably then called Mr. Hart what I would normally call my husband. During George Bush's presidency, his Secretary of State was Condoleezza Rice, and she accidentally referred to him as her husband during a press conference, and the news media really had a lot of fun with this, so I found this political cartoon, and I thought it was funny. So if we could all just kind of laugh out loud for just a second, I'd really appreciate it. I really enjoy discussing forces of the mind in class. This is the decision-making process that we reflect upon making the right, responsible decision. The superego regulates that, or maybe perhaps the selfish decision, and the id is responsible for those poor judgments. But anyway, this is a force that helps us to resolve conflict, really everyday conflict that we may stumble upon. It could be as simple as when you come home from school, should you eat broccoli, which sadly I just did, or those delicious potato chips? Well, you think about it for a little bit, and then your ego steps in, and you start going back and forth, the benefits of the broccoli versus the negativeness of the potato chip, and maybe the broccoli wins. Or sometimes the potato chips win, and that's okay too. Or it could be as complex as curfew is midnight. I really need to be home at midnight. Midnight rolls around, and you don't want to go home. And the selfish id in you says, I don't care. I shouldn't have a curfew anyway. I'm not coming home. I will be much happier if I stay out. But the responsible side, the superego, tells you that no, you should go home. Your parents are worried. And hopefully the ego sort of regulates the decisions that you make in terms of that. The picture on the bottom of the slide shows the selfish id, sometimes portrayed as the devil, and your superego portrayed sometimes as an angel. I don't know if you recall when you were little and you used to watch cartoons. I think a lot of times when I watch Bugs Bunny or Tom and Jerry or something like that, I'm completely dating myself now. I think that sometimes you could actually see, like the devil on the one shoulder and the angel on the other, and sometimes they even got into like a boxing match, on top of the cartoon character's head. But obviously that is not realistic, but the id is selfish. The id doesn't care who it hurts or what others need. It only cares about personal pleasure and being happy no matter what the cost is. The id's goal is to have instant satisfaction without really weighing the cost. So if you look at the curfew example again, if you do not come home when you tell your parents that you're going to be home, and you don't text them, you don't call them and let them know, they're going to be worried about you. Worried sick, as a matter of fact. But the id does not care. It just wants to have that instant pleasure. The ego. This is that moderating force that tries to balance out the selfish needs of the id and the reality of the world around you. Sometimes it's called the reality principle because you analyze the consequence and you sort of weigh back and forth the pros and the cons, perhaps. So you should go home at midnight. You don't necessarily want to. If you text your mom and dad and let them know, maybe you'll be able to stay out a little later. So it sort of is that balancing mechanism. The superego is the balance in the middle. It takes that angel on one shoulder or that devil on the other shoulder and acts as a balance to help resolve conflict in terms of decision making. As we get older, or we have life experiences or learn from some past mistakes, or maybe even listen to what our parents, teachers, coaches, other adults in our life, have to offer in terms of advice, it helps us to bring that balance, that happiness, without causing pain to others. And finally, I just kind of like this picture. The shark kind of says it all as to why perhaps I prefer to swim in chlorinated swimming pools where I can see the bottom and especially what's lurking behind me. So if you have any questions about this section in Notes on Freud, please let me know.